right, buddy. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership Been Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Cherie.
All right. So as you can see, you know this face. He was recently in the studio. He's not new, but I'll let him introduce himself just for kicks and giggles.
Kicks and giggles is funny. Jason Bial and everyone, I'm excited to be with this amazing team on the Leadership Blend.
We're excited to have you as always. All right, so today we're going to do a little shifting. I will not be moderating today because, I have to keep Simone on her toes. It's been, 6, 7 years since we've been together?
I think so.
And we still together. But that don't mean she can just sit over here and chill and do her thing. So she's going to moderate today, and me and Jason are just her correspondents today. So Take it away.
Well, we have a lot to cover. So we're going to spend this hour on hot topics. So basically covering all the current issues, all the current events, catching everybody up. And then we can do a deep dive later on another time. But for now, Georgia has been very widely discussed across the country. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we were talking about actually very recently were the elections and the midterm elections. So I kind of want to start there. We spent a lot of time talking about the Democratic primary, which of course we saw through. We saw Keisha Lance Bottoms, our former mayor of Atlanta, being the Democratic frontrunner. There was a Republican primary that happened, a runoff, since we last met, where we had Burt Jones and Rick Jackson. That primary is now closed. We now have Rick Jackson. I'd like some thoughts, and then I'd like some thoughts on our Senate race.
Ooh. Politics is so messy.
You're going to take a minute. I'll go first. You're going to take a minute, so I'll just go first. I warned people, even the people that we had here that came, all the leadership that came, and everybody was betting on a different horse. And I said, what if Keisha wins? And everybody was like, that ain't going to happen. That's not likely to happen. I'm looking at polling, and we're talking about name recognition. Good, bad, or indifferent. People know the name Keisha. I was like, I think it could happen. I was like, are y'all prepared for if that happens? Well, I don't think it's going to happen. And it happened. And it wasn't even close. I think that's the sad part. It wasn't even close. She won by like 56%. 56%?
Yeah, no,
it wasn't even close.
Her primary. Yeah.
The boys were like, I think the closest was like 16%. It wasn't even close. Now, for me, does that mean she could actually win? Actually, I think she might actually be able to win. And everybody knows I'm not the biggest Keisha fan. I'm not a hater, but I'm not the biggest fan of hers. But I actually think this time she may have a shot. Personally, I'm a little disappointed because I felt like Stacey should have been in this position eons ago. But
Well, there's a John the Baptist that comes and paves the way. And I kind of think of Stacey as coming and paving the way because she actually did. A lot to her credit in the state of Georgia and diversifying our voter base and really, ringing the alarm. I also think to what you just stated, America wasn't ready for a female president, and Georgia definitely wasn't ready for a female governor, especially when you look at Stacey Abrams and the minute things that people attacked her on. Oh, she's not married. She doesn't have. Are these the qualifications of how to run this? I almost cussed. How to run this state? Or are these the qualifications of what you have on your checkoff list for women? Because we like, people in America, we like to box people, right? So you got to be in this box to be governor.
I mean, is it that or do we need to be honest about this? Pretty people versus.
Oh, well, I wasn't going to go down, but yeah, no, you. I think that those things, of course, also play a role. Let's also look at her being darker skinned. So now I have a dark skinned woman who is intelligent, who knows her power, that is in rooms. And people also have to understand politics. And now you have people who influence politics, and I have to take, word from this person who not only is Black, who is not only a woman of darker skin, but has power to tell me no.
Doesn't it speak to, though, the power of Fulton and DeKalb in the metro area and her name recognition? I mean, you mentioned name recognition. I feel like that's got to be the biggest piece, right?
For Keisha?
Or for Keisha.
So we being honest, I'm going to say this. Atlanta does influence everything, but I want to take us back to the year of 2000. In the year of 2000, when we look at the Georgia maps, right? Mm-hmm. Let's look at from Augusta to Columbus. Very small. Very small. Those who listening, you can go look this up. Very small blue specks, right, on the map. Now, when we looked at the data coming in from the recent runoff election, we saw that from Columbus, Georgia to Augusta, Georgia, that's a purple wave. So those small counties that were, we have 30, 40% maybe Democrat independent voters, there's a purple wave there. So Georgia is in an interesting position because it's not just, and I'm not saying we don't have power, it's not just the metro Atlanta close proximity counties, but it also are other areas where poverty has moved south that has moved a lot of working families into areas that 15, 18 years ago, they were predominantly Republican white counties.
Sure.
Now they are like Douglasville. They are like
Cobb's a good
Fayette
example,
County, which is also changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
so we saying they're changing the purple that people can kind of find themselves in the middle.
They're definitely more purple. Yes, people can find themselves in the middle.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do we make of the GOP side then? Because we had Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, who I could not tell apart, to be entirely frank, until, with the exception of knowing that one of them, Burt Jones, was Trump's nominee, or Trump's endorsement, right? So Jones had Trump's endorsement. And then Kemp, our current governor, jumped in for Jones very late and endorsed him also. And yet Jackson won. So what do we make of that? Does that say anything about Trump's word, about Trump's
my
way?
thing, because I thought about y'all, I'm sorry, the Republicans, there's too much going on the Democratic side. I glance the Republican side, but it just gets disgusting. So I don't really spend a lot of time there. So my thought was, I remember y'all talking about one of them was super racist. Was that the other one that lost?
Well, frankly, I find them both very similar. I couldn't tell them both apart. I just knew one of them had Trump's
Rick Jackson
endorsement.
Jackson's known nationally
for being a self-made billionaire.
But his ads around the Muslims and the Mongolians sent a clear message of, if I'm elected, I'm coming after black and brown people. So nationally, I know that people...
But Jones' ads were more about the Chinese and trans people. So that's
Chinese. What about Chinese?
Yeah. Yeah, selling vapes to our kids that get them addicted to vapes.
You can't be serious.
No, for sure. So, but go ahead, please continue.
No, I mean, this is very interesting. Neither of the candidates really were screaming, we want to see a progressive Georgia move forward for all, citizens. It was like you either were voting for pro-slavery or Jim Crow. To be honest,
I'm more racist. That's what it felt like.
It's really me. And I think we also have to look at the level of education in our state. And so the outgoing governor, please remember, we are in a literacy crisis. And in the midst of a literacy crisis, the outgoing governor, Kemp, removed reading teachers as a position in the state of Georgia. I know because I was a reading teacher. And we had to find other positions in public education to work because he thought in his mind that it would be good to remove reading
during a literacy crisis.
But why is that important? Because people are illiterate. That's why they were confused by the ads, because critical thinking is a part of literacy. So they couldn't critically think to decipher between Jackson and Jones because there's a gap there.
Does Keisha stand a better chance against Jackson? Do you think does this make us feel better about November? Do you think it says anything about, whether or not since Trump's endorsement lost the primaries, lost the runoff, then does that mean that Trump's word won't carry November, won't carry the day? What do you think that
most commentators are saying that Trump can primary his candidates, but he can't get them to win. So I'm not, I guess for me, the question is Georgia finally ready to embrace a black woman as governor? I guess that's where I sit now. And again, 56%, even though it's not a collective, it's still a good thing for just us. The fact that they were willing to do, and it wasn't close. If it was close, I'd probably been a little more worried, but it wasn't close between, and I'll use the gender gap. It wasn't close between the woman and the men. Like, she dusted them. So if we're ready, I think we can do it. And I think we actually might be ready. Again, I'm still just annoyed because I really felt like it should have been Stacey. But, I'll take what I can get. And, maybe Keisha will do a better job.
Ready or not, we are here. I think the biggest claim to fame for this election season is going to be economics. And Trump is not on the ballot. People who follow politics are looking at this very closely because economically, people are suffering. Now, I'm not going to give us all the data because I love for people to go and research, but I am curious to see how many listeners, how many people are aware of where Georgia ranks economically in our economy right now. Because from what I know and what I'm seeing, there are a lot of white families who are in rural areas, a lot of blended families, a lot of Black families in rural areas that are like, we are more conservative. However, my wife lost her job.
Right.
I lost my wife because we could not get to a hospital because under Trump's administration, it was closed. Then we lost our jobs, and I lost family members because economically we couldn't take care of ourselves, and we lost our public goods, schools, hospitals, the workforce. So I think these are going to be the determinants of will Keisha Lance Bottoms or will Rick Jackson win in November?
I think that makes a lot of sense. So
I guess my other question is, did we pick the lesser of two evils when it comes to the Republican side? Did we pick the lesser of two evils? Or did the dice just kind of fall where they fell?
You know, it opens up Pandora's box because Rick Jackson has no political experience, but he has a lot of money. So now we are in
and that's what he was riding on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We are in an economic decline. So at this
It's like, so here's my question, right?
Your speeches?
So here's how I put this question to the way you put it, because I do think the cost of living and the economic conditions are probably fueling all Georgia voters. And so I think the question is, if you're a Republican, are you seeing it as, here's this billionaire here to save the day yet again, right? What people love about what Donald Trump's people love about Donald Trump is, right, it's just his wealth. And surely I'm listening to a rich person. Rich people have the answers, not poor people. Or is it going to look more like, and what's the Democratic response to that? Like, what's their response to what better housing looks like, or cost of living, cost of utilities, and lack of jobs? Like, what is the Democratic answer? What do Democrats need to hear to turn out for Keisha about how we're going to address the cost of
living? I guess the side to that is, if it's a matter of seeing versus hearing. It's like when we hear about Mayor Dickens and his plan and how it's reimagining neighborhoods and things of that magnitude, you may not see it but that's always been the issue. Democrats don't show what they're doing. They talk a lot, but they don't really show a lot, like the social media and things of that magnitude. A lot of stuff that these who have been coming in on the show lately talking about with Mayor Dickens and his plan, I haven't seen a lot of it, but it's in motion. And I think that's the issue, that they got to get more social media friendly and really get out there to show the message, not just talk it, show it, because Republicans will show you.
I think people are also tired of that. I want to come back to Dickens and another point around the NRIs and tax, districts, because I'll come back to that in a few moments. But I would say the Democrats have to actively listen. They're not doing that. They gave us some good candidates. Now, I also will take us back a few years when I came on to the podcast and I was running for school board against Jason Estevez.
That's what it was?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
People forget that.
Yeah, I didn't
Now,
realize.
that was the highest election since 1998, where people in the city of Atlanta actually came out over, I know in my specific election, we had over 9,000 people to vote. Now, I'm sharing this because I ran at a time where if we don't address what's happening, we're going to have to close 16 schools. What are we having to do right now? In Atlanta, close 16 schools. And I'm stating this because the people made a clear choice. The Democrats said, well, we want to keep this incumbent in, who right after he won, I want to remind everyone, he said, I'm leaving this post and I'm running for what? Senate, which completely destroyed Atlanta public schools. And now we are closing 16 schools, displacing families, displacing the workforce, displacing people who were close to retirement and now cannot retire. Because when we could have made a decision, the Democratic Party said, well, no, we see him as a potential candidate for governor. So regardless if it disrupts working class families, we're going to do what's best for us. I'm sharing that because the Democrats need to do what's best for the people, as opposed to what's best for, quote unquote, the party, which is proven not to work. So
let me ask this, because you mentioned the Senate, but I want to talk about the U.S. Senate, right? And the fact that Senator Ossoff is running for this seat and running against Republican Mike Collins. So I feel like from a distance, what I've heard said about John Ossoff, he doesn't have the same personal brand that Warnock has. That a lot of his conversations have been about, government ethics and accountability. And I think he's trying to build a reputation of like, a watchdog, in Congress. I feel like that's kind of where he's going. But Republicans have very simple messaging. And so I tend to think maybe more so in line with where you are, Ricardo, as far as I think that sometimes things just need to get a lot more base.
Yeah.
Hopefully not base, basic. Hopefully not base. Hopefully we're still a little bit higher. But I think more basic, right? Because I think where Republicans are running on is I'm going to secure elections. I'm anti-democrat. I'm going to get rid of this inflation. I'm going to get rid of immigration. And they tend to have the same talking points up and down the ballot in a way that I think is just easier for people to swallow. So, I mean, what do you make of the Senate race? And how do you have feelings about John Ossoff being able to carry it and truly keep it blue? Or if not, does that mean that like the Ossoff-Warnock period was just like an anomaly?
I think that we have to consider what we say all the time. If there is a comprehension and literacy problem, then you need to think about that when you're delivering your messaging. It's great to use big words and highfalutin things, but if you're talking to people who are like working on farms or working at McDonald's, they want simple answers and they want simple results. And I think we keep missing that. Like you said, they're not listening. They keep talking these points and it sounds great, but no, when you have a billionaire, which is, I hate to use that term very loosely when you talk about Trump, who just sits up and kind of makes up his own universe, that's kind of what people want to hear. Like he sold them all these dreams and he didn't deliver on anything. Let's be very clear. He has not delivered on anything, but they continue to support him. People want simple messaging. Are you going to, actually, I don't know if that'll work this go around. That worked on him the first go around. I don't know if that'll work this time, selling them all these dreams. I don't know. I think people are actually starting to feel it a little bit. So now I think their intake might be different. It's like, no. That guy told us that too. And we're not seeing anything. And I don't want this to get any worse. So that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen, that people will start thinking, can it get worse? And actually realize, yes, it actually can. So hopefully that'll be what happens. But
simple messaging is important. So what people need to understand with Ossoff and Warnock is that for me, these two leaders are detrimentally important to the success of the base that I support, which are grandparents, caretakers, raising school-age children.
Sure.
Here's what I want people to know. When we think about our seniors, when we think about grandparents, our caretakers, Warnock is on the front lines. Think about Medicaid, think about Medicare. I'm not saying Ossoff is not, but Warnock has made that his messaging. And in D.C., what I know for a fact is that this man is representing us is doing all he can to move this forward. Ossoff is doing the same thing when we think about public housing. I want everybody to take this in. Housing. We are in a literacy crisis as well as a housing crisis. So if you're on TikTok, go look up Planet Fitness, and there are so many different families that are posting about having to shower in Planet Fitness, having to stay in the Planet Fitness parking lots because they have lost their homes. These are parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs that cannot afford to house their children and protect them. That needs to be the message. And the Democratic Party is not connecting to that, specifically Ossoff, because you have to, be on the ground, but we also have to accept the fact that we don't like poor people. The Democratic Party is not talking to poor
his background
people.
Too. Does that speak to they have different backgrounds? Because insider trading and the military bases in Georgia and a couple other things I've heard John Ossoff talk about, it's not a matter of them being non-issues. But sometimes I think different classes have different concerns.
We're on the same page. It's lived experience. And it also is leaning into what the Democratic Party does not do. Now, let's be honest here. The Republicans with these ads were able to get a lot of people out because who were these ads attacking? They were attacking the stereotypes around working class and poor people. So, yes, race does matter, but class also matters. And so when people hear candidates that are attacking poverty, that are attacking the poor, they're like, oh, we want to get behind that because no one wants to be labeled as Title I or working class or the working poor or in the hood or in the ghettos or in the trailer park. So I'm just making that connection because he has a pathway to win. But if he doesn't get on the ground and really focus in on that housing affordability, then it's going to be a sad day for Georgians because now we will lose someone who's a champion for us in D.C. to make sure that the housing benefits that Georgia as a state is seeing, we have.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what we see. I see Warnock. He does post on at least Facebook. So he'll throw out something to kind of let us know what he's doing, what he's working on. I can't say that I see that from Ossoff. He just kind of shows. I've seen him more now because he has to run. But I can't say that I see a lot. And the reality is what you see shapes your perception.
That's true.
He's got to get more out. Like you see, he's got to get more on the ground. And as much as people hate social media, you got to use it. Like
use it.
Yeah,
you got to use
be
it.
authentic as well. Like don't just because if we know that is a great point. So now people are, and I'm not saying that we have unintelligent voters because, we know that there's a variety of us, right? But people do go by what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want it to be unauthentic that, now we're just seeing Ossoff everywhere. And it's like, because you're running for office, he has an opportunity again to really get in community, to show where, hey, here are the things that I'm pushing in DC for our state. And here are the areas in our state who actually need these benefits the most. And that's actually what the people are saying. Now, imagine if you're from Thomaston, Georgia, and you see your area with John Ossoff, people are going to be like, oh my God, those are my third cousins. They don't never go down there. And that would get people's attention. You made a great point.
Well, he's behind the 8 ball also too, because like you said, it can't be a situation of, now we see him because he's running. Which if he starts slamming ads is exactly what's going to look like. It's like, so he's running. So now we're seeing him. So he's got to be very careful with that. He's kind of got to ease his way into being seen, because if not, it is going to be unauthentic. Because we haven't. I know I would say, I'm like, I know you're running, so I know I'm going to see you now. But before this, prior to this, I didn't see you. So he's got to be careful with that, because he's already behind the 8 ball. So he's got to be careful with that.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing about Georgia, I definitely want to talk. Well, a couple more things. So I think the first is redistricting and the special session that was called.
Shout out to the people. The people showed up. I was blown away. I was like, they organized and they were at the Capitol. I was like, okay. I wish I might have went, but
the halls were packed. Packed the halls.
Yeah, they did that one.
And outside. I mean, it was packed, and there were people again that came from all over the state. I'm stressing that point because yes, Metro Atlanta counties are influencing what's happening, but people carpooled. Those churches bus people from South Central. North Georgia is still very heavily Republican, but they also had representation. Like, listen, y'all, this has impacted our workforce. I'm just saying, like in the mountain areas, you don't see, our colleagues out there picking cherries, strawberries, cotton. You see people of darker skin who are doing that. You don't see it now because of this administration and their attacks. So they are standing in the gap as well.
But it was good to see some conservative Georgians say, okay, this is too much. Like, this is too much. Like, this is because Georgia does have a legacy, right? MLK is a part of that legacy. Civil rights is a part of that legacy. So I do feel like it was good. That's part of some of what I saw. Now, Kemp, just for people who need a reminder, so the trigger was the recent Supreme Court decision that made it harder to challenge maps based on claims that they were drawn predominantly using race. We talked about several states who've been immediately passing redistricting, immediately passing legislation, trying to fight that redistricting, sometimes unsuccessfully. So Kemp called for a special session. A lot of Republicans are saying this is opportunity. We could redraw these maps. The maps, again, that we are talking about explicitly have a lot to do with Atlanta and the suburbs, breaking up the suburbs, which carried the election most recently, especially the election away from Trump. But our suburbs, Cobb, Gwinnett, are increasingly blue. And Fulton, DeKalb, of course, are always very important places. But these are some of the areas that we think are going to be the most vulnerable. DeKalb as well. Just very vulnerable to redistricting, trying to, weaken potential Black voting power overall. So what districts are, if any, so this is still going on. You were there today. Can you talk about kind of what you observed today, what some of the conversations were about?
Our man on the ground.
What the fights are still about? Yeah.
The biggest fight is economically how this is going to impact people. And let me tell you guys, a teacher by trade, I wrote down my notes so I can make sure I stay focused, but I do want to specifically for Georgia hone in on business investments and worker perks. And that has been the biggest thing. Now, why am I talking about workers' perks? And I'm going to stay on this for 5 seconds. Worker perks sounds good, right? but it doesn't benefit everyone in the state of Georgia. It only benefits those who are 65 years or older on their current jobs.
When you say perks, what are we talking about? Are we talking about pensions?
Tax breaks.
Okay.
Tax breaks. So now if you think about it, let's go with a school system, for example. There are school districts that are having to face school closures. Most of the people who get pushed out first are people who have to retire or who are close to retirement. And you also have your new teachers who come in, right? Those are the people who get pushed out first because of tax incentives. You know, if you think about you have a large base of retirees, you're able to do tax incentives for them. This is a very heated conversation because Georgia ranks number 3 in having the largest number of grandparents and caretakers raising school-age children.
Yeah.
Well, why is that important? Because these people are still working. So this is your voter base, right? So you think about redistricting lines and you have people who, for example, may be in one area where they have a representative that has been a champion for workers who are over the age of 60, and then you may have someone who is not. What happens to people that don't have a representative that said that they're not ageist? That they won't say, oh, you know what? We need to focus solely on the new workforce. That was a conversation that came up today. When you think about redistricting, if you have a representative that is like, well, the new workforce and AI, that is a dog whistle. That basically is saying that we want to push out people who are 55 and older in these corporations. And then economically, what does that do? So that was a huge conversation.
Okay, so connect some dots and I'm thinking like a layman's person. So we're talking about a group of people, retirees, people over 55, 60, who are normally in the class that can retire because everything's set up for them to require Social Security, all that good stuff.
And it's 55 because you are considered, if you have children in your household, and a lot of people don't know this, that's why I wanted to say it. If you're 55, you're considered to be an aging guardian if you have school-age children in your household you are raising them. If they're in your household, they're dependent on you, and they are registered in any school. But if they're registered in school, then you are considered in that tax, that tax base.
So having this class of people who you automatically deem safe because they have retirement things that normally have retirement things of that magnitude. In the old days, it's been easier to move them out because you think they're safe. Now we're having to move that class of people back to the working class of people where if my retirement is not set up or it's been destroyed, thanks Trump, now I have to work. So when you say moving me out, I'm not safe anymore. So now I need to be considered in this different group because I have to work to take care of the kids that I now am responsible for.
It's the breakdown. Let's bring it all the way down, and it takes away the safety net. So the safety net is at jeopardy here. So why legislators are being torn, which is why you see more conservative legislators saying, because at the end of the day, people do care about people, and most of us do. But at the end of the day, they care about the bottom line, which is the dollar. And so with conservative legislators, if they see that, economically, you are going to disrupt a part of our intricate workforce. It's also, remember that people who are affluent and have money, they have day nannies. They have evening nannies. They have weekend nannies. Who do you think these people are? What age range are these persons in? So I'm just saying that it's something to think about, and it's definitely something being considered, workforce and economics.
Well, that creates a whole dynamic that's actually kind of scary because, like you said, you have the newer teachers, which I'm sure their thought process is, well, they're early in it. They can find another job. They can land somewhere. So you think they're, in essence, kind of safe. But then when you look at the economy, no, they're not safe because everybody's trying to struggle to find a job, be it teachers, be it engineers, whatever the case may be. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have the people who should be ready to retire who can't retire because now I have to take care of my 2-year-old and now I have to work. Because I actually saw this on Hoarders the other day where it was a lady, she was ready to retire and then her daughter got on drugs and now she has her 2 grandkids and she's like, now I have to work. And she's waiting tables. She's like, now I have to work because I have to have that extra income because my Social Security isn't a lot. And I wasn't set up to be taking care of my grandkids at this age on this level of money.
So connecting this back to our state senators and what Ossoff and Warnock are doing for this same population that's being impacted by Medicaid, Medicare. If you were to get a representative in that's not advocating for those supplements, then imagine You have a workforce of people who are between 40 and 70 who don't have access to healthcare or supplements. They can't get to a specialist. So now it's a trickle-down effect. And I think people are really taking into consideration the trickle-down effect of the elections happening right now.
I want to switch to another topic because it's about power and concentration. So I think about a week ago, Elon Musk and really SpaceX made news because we were talking about ushering in our first trillionaire, somebody whose net worth or total wealth would be $1 trillion+. And I feel like this is kind of like relevant, but I think in the background of all these conversations, when we're talking about how families, even in rural Georgia, are looking at how much things cost, how much they can't afford. Working families are, becoming unhoused increasingly. And then in the backdrop, we have people accumulating more money than we've ever heard of people accumulating, right? And I think all this kind of creates some dynamic too. So I think most of us are familiar with the term tax the rich, but I also think that there's been some interesting recent examples of conservatives and Republicans coming up with some of these same sentiments. And I think on top of that, with AI, the AI boom happening, the data centers happening, more and more workers finding themselves or being told that they're redundant and more jobs being threatened. I do feel like we may see more and more of this. Josh Hawley, a conservative at the Teamsters convention just this past week, was openly criticizing mega corporations, talking about how they've lost their moral compass, how the audience was, overwhelmingly in large support. At the Axios AI Summit, there was a concern expressed by several Republicans attending that AI has expanded too far, it's concentrating too much power, even talking about the community impact of that. J.D. Vance was found just a couple of months ago, not saying tax the rich, of course, but mentioning how there's too much, we need more worker protections, and that workers need to be treated as a serious priority when it comes to AI, and workers should not be displaced. So I'm hoping we'll get more and more of this on both sides of it, but I am curious what you all think about how we've been seeing this, because a lot of states are responding on the ballot with ways to use some of this money that is being accumulated and say that we need to redistribute.
I think it goes back to what you said about people who have lots of money with powerful influence, or people who don't have lots of money because they feel like they have the answers. Mm-hmm. I can't understand for the life of me why it literally took laws that will pretty much strip you down to the bone for people to go, wait, maybe I'm not doing well. Or why did it take for you to lose your job and end up in an economy that they've been talking about for a minute that you can't find another one? Why does it have to literally hit home before people respond? I get it, but it's not helping us. So now I'm thinking about the housing thing. Because I spend a lot of time on TikTok. Don't ask me why. Maybe because it's summertime and I don't have nothing to do.
It's fine.
I spend a lot of time on TikTok, and I follow influencers who live in hotels, and even they're complaining now because the hotels continue to go up. Mm. Well, if you're already paying, I think the cheapest one I heard from a lady was about $1,400 a month, which is rent, and now it's going up to $1,600 a month. What are we doing? And we have to remember that families are living in these hotels too, to the capacity that buses are picking them up from the hotel. I was floored the other day before school was out, seeing buses, trucks to hotels, picking up swoons of kids, not one or two, swoons of kids. Medicaid. Now, I think of my sister and her 5 kids, she makes money, but just the thought of it that, them not having Medicaid and not being able to do things, or the hospital's closing, and now I gotta go 2 hours to get to the nearest hospital. Because I'm from a very small town in Varnville. Me and my sister were talking about it. I was like, okay, well, if they close the hospital in Hampton, where's the next hospital? You may be able to get to Walterboro, but they close Walterboro. If you live in Hampton, it's going to take you an hour and a half to get to Charleston. Mm. I have to think about these things because my family lives in those kinds of towns. Yeah, but again, to them, they don't think about it until the hospital's closed. And now it's like, oh my God, how did this happen? Babe, it happened a year ago. Yeah. When you wasn't paying attention. Yeah. So I guess for me, it's like when we factor in AI, what does that actually look like? I want one of y'all to explain that to me. What does AI look like? What is that? We use that term, but when I think, I'm old school. So when I think about AI, I'm thinking about Virtuosity with Denzel Washington. He's chasing around a virtual person through the real world. What does AI look like to replace jobs?
I'm curious.
Artificial intelligence. I think it says it. Artificial intelligence. We are in a misinformation age to where people can be distracted by reality TV. I think about what I would explain to people, and when I talk to grandparents about AI and, it's supposed to be a tool, a resource. When I think about AI, I think about the advancements of technology. So, for example, think about how Meta has us in the chokehold. And everybody is on Facebook, and I can't tell you anybody's birthday without Facebook, or I don't know if somebody passes away without Facebook, or I don't know the latest gossip without Facebook. Nothing new is under the sun. So let's go back in history for about 5 seconds and think about when grandma and them would go to the grocery store, and right when you check out, it was all those gossip columns.
Oh yeah,
Well, now you may not see those there because you don't have to, because you have Meta, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have TikTok. You have all of the X. You have all of these places where people can be distracted, get gossip, and they get to make more money, and they get to do it cheaply because you mentioned something else that's important to this conversation: influencers. You don't have to have a certification. You don't have to have a degree. So now I'm not paying journalists, right, to do media. I'm paying influencers to tell me what they think, as opposed to the facts of life.
Well, even journalism is a good example, right? Because editors, right? Magazine editors, publications, digital publications, whether it's New York Times, Washington Post, not those entities specifically, because I'm sure they're working very hard to keep all of their actual journalists. But you can produce an article with AI, and people do it all the time. So you don't need to hire people to fact find or to write articles. Lots of industries have already used this, and lots of jobs have already been lost. But I think the biggest examples are those white collar professions, and a lot of the entry level white collar professions like data enterers, transcriptionists, call centers, customer service, all of these things which are increasingly AI all the time. When you need help with something, it's not just text or something that's written, which if you're me, if you get customer service, you may chat customer service, but it's also calls when you're calling, right? And like machines and voice automated systems that are helping you to troubleshoot or to help you with whatever your account issue is. Like those are all AI inventions getting smarter and smarter and smarter so that they don't have to hire people to help you work out what those problems are. Designers, right? AI video, AI logos, AI art. So lots of entry-level professions, and that's why Gen Z is overwhelmingly anti-AI and anti-big tech, and that's been increasingly documented.
Yes,
their sentiments about it, because this is the workforce they're walking into, and all those entry-level professions that don't require years and years of experience, like I'm a clerk, I'm an admin assistant, you now have AI for. So you don't need somebody to book your tickets, or you don't need somebody to email your customers anymore.
AI is good at certain things. It's not good at everything. When you think about customer service and some of the lawsuits, I sit on a couple of national AI advisory boards, and one of the coalitions we created, it's not just a national tool, but it's an international tool for parents to understand how to navigate AI. And some of the things that we've just, heard back in regards to the usage of AI, a lot of data centers are being built, they're owned by Meta. I mean, we are pushing this because you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. If Meta owns a lot of these data centers, something that you use every day is now building a data center in South Georgia in a hospital that was closed. And I think about those family members who could go 15 to 30 minutes up the street to the hospital. Well, now it's not a hospital. It's a data center that Meta owns, and you can see their obituary on Meta now, but you can't get to a hospital because we've been distracted. Our priorities are not intact. So AI does make things easier, but for who?
Well, I think that's a good question. But this is why when we talked about it before, we said for most of the technological revolutions, there was an argument that jobs would be created or at least replaced. When people were worried that what happens to the jobs, when they created computers and things like that, it's what's going to happen to the jobs before? Well, right, there'll be new jobs. This is the case, maybe the first time in a long time, that is absolutely not true. There's a clear reduction in the amount of jobs that are needed with the AI boom. Coding, right? AI can create code for you, so you don't need to hire anybody to help you with your website anymore. It can edit your videos for you. You don't need to hire editors anymore. I mean, all kinds of professions. And it's targeted at cognitive labor.
Yes.
So we're not in a place yet where all blue-collar tasks are being replaced, like fixing your toilets or your kitchens or your fridges, yet.
We're not. I don't think we will get there, though. The infrastructure.
They are replacing security. right? Because there are already robot dogs around South Atlanta that landlords have hired, property managers have hired to patrol, that have called the police, that have successfully made arrests. I think we'll only see more and more of those.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
But I also think with the lawsuits that are happening with these things, machine learning and generative AI is a big part of the conversation that people are missing. These things have to be put into data centers that is also known as AI. So you do have to have someone who is hired to do that. So if I have a room full of, for example, Asian people who are inputting information, there's not a clear line of unbiased because they are going to go by what they think. And no, they are not white, regardless if they identify as white or you. They're not that. They don't have that lived experience. We know that they're not black. We also know that there are stereotypes and things that are connected. So when we look at AI in the workforce, when women, specifically black women, are being pushed out, men of color are being pushed out, people who don't have affluent degrees from major universities are being pushed out. So it also is creating a hyper sensitive level of racism that is just so blatant and right in our faces that there is no way to reverse that if everything that AI has been fed is biased.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And also we're the people who continue to feed it, and we have that same bias. So it's I don't think that this is being implemented because it's great. And I certainly don't think it is because it's like foolproof. I think it is so cost effective because labor is the most expensive cost of any business. It is so cost effective. And lawsuits do take so much capital on the recipient side, on the victim side, the claimant, the plaintiff side, and take so long that they don't slow business. They don't necessarily stall business. Businesses are not in large part being suspended from operating while these things are happening. Lawsuits may come, but profits will come a lot faster and a lot more consistently. And so that's why people are implementing these systems and they're reducing their workforces. I work adjacent to a lot of attorneys. We've seen entire firms, hate to shout out the National Employment Law Project, completely shut down. Plenty of organizations, like mid-sized organizations, 50, maybe 250 employees, completely reducing costs because they can't compete for one. And they're not protected under the federal administration either, so there's no safety net or like fallback for those professions. But it's a lot of white collar professions.
Well, I guess the scary part for me is, we tend to go to higher ground whenever something's removed. So if we remove all the entry level jobs, the higher ground would be, okay, well, let's go to college and get a degree. Well, that's a problem because now they've changed the way you can borrow money. Because I was reading that day, I was like, we can do the Parent Plus loans and things of that magnitude. Some of those are going away, and some of them they've raised the standard on or lowered it. So you probably wouldn't even be able to pay for college to completely finish it unless you get scholarships. Well, if a lot of the companies are going under, who's providing the money for the scholarships? So it's just like this continues. The higher ground is becoming, the higher ground is becoming almost just a theory because there's not going to be any higher ground.
No, for sure. Soon. And these are still like college educated professions. I just think they're not professions that you need 10 years of experience for, 5 years. So that's the conundrum that now Gen Z is walking into is, well, unless I have 20 years of experience doing something, it does not matter what my credentials are because whatever the tasks are, AI could do those tasks. And so companies just are not hiring for them. So
this is scary. It feels like this is a road to Armageddon because it's like when you sit down and think about it.
It also is scarier under this administration because Elon Musk was able to get to where he did because everyone in the world knew, America, bright idea, decided to elect one of the most
corrupt, stupid, violent, ignorant.
All of those adjectives. I was going to try to come up with something a little bit better, but everyone in the world knew this. And so when you think about an Elon Musk who was forced out of South Africa, first of all, everybody just sit with that. Do you know how hard it is for an African country to exile you and put you out? Hence how the North Atlantic slave trade started because they could not get rid of these people. So I just want people to sit with that these people united to exile this man from people from across the continent. And he was allowed to come here because of what? The lack of regulations. And that is how he was able to get to where he is because of the lack of regulations. So think about these companies that are using AI. Data privacy is key. A lot of people will say if they're knowledgeable, data centers are a form of a surveillance center because it is collecting. That's what a data
Sure.
center is. It is collecting data. You may not have to have physical workforce to be present, but that AI is going to be collecting data through the buses, through the traffic lights, through, oh yeah, we have all this AI technology now in the parks to keep us safe, where they're monitoring what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you interact with people?
And certainly the use of devices.
Yeah, so now they're
sure.
also, that's all collecting data so that they can continue to build advanced technology to say, oh, okay, we need this technology to think exactly like a human in this situation.
Okay. For time, because I think there's a lot more we need to talk about here. I do think we need to keep talking about it because the workforce is important and it's going to come up in this election for sure this November. What would your final thoughts be?
We're doomed.
No.
Oh, God.
Okay, can I replace that?
Okay, now we're doomed.
Now we're doomed.
Doom.
No, not doomed. Here's what I will say. If we're talking about, my final thought would be the elimination of 500 customer support jobs and the hiring of 10 AI engineers or AI security analysts, right? If that's the trade-off we're talking about, then we're entering a perfect world for universal basic income. So that's something to be positive about. And we should, be rallying around.
I agree. I would say information is our biggest asset. Being informed, being aware of what's happening, and knowing that your intellect needs to be protected, especially in these times. And you want to have representatives that are going to stand for the people and not so much of the companies and the products.
Yeah. You could take us out, Ricardo.
My final thought is, being my age, 46, I never thought I would live to see the things that are happening. Never. Like, I constantly go back to the horror movies I used to watch, and those horror movies were COVID. Those were horror movies. Like, there's this airborne thing and people are walking around with masks. These were our scary movies when I was a kid. To live through them and to live to see a felon in the White House just making himself rich and nobody saying anything, I don't know how to process that some days, honestly. And I just I just continue to be surprised at the fight that we do still have. And times like this week when they wanted to do the redistricting and everybody showed up and it was white, black, and all that gives me little glimmers of hope. But as a collective, we are in serious trouble. And now is the time to stop playing on phones and start reading more books and finding bloggers who actually can talk about facts. Because I have like 2 that talk about facts. And it's just like, it's very engaging, very interesting. But get off social media sometimes. Or find valuable people to listen to and don't feed into the garbage and the alternate facts, because Trump has done an amazing job of creating a world of alternate facts. Mm-hmm. So just keep hope alive, because there is some.
Yes.
Wonderfully said. Okay. We'll see you next time on Leadership Blend.
Same time, same place, with the host Ricardo D. Rice and co-host
Simone Cherie.